is Thursday, June 4th, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Jules Sterling, and I'm the diplomat who turns late shipments into new opportunities.
This is Elena Rossi.
I'm Buck Reynolds.
You're listening to Dan Miller. We have a great show for you today.
Well, we have a busy show today, everyone. We're following up on some heavy stories from yesterday. We looked at that global fuel crisis and the maritime security spikes in the Hormuz that were driving prices towards $6 a gallon. Plus, that massive $10 million pay raise over at Melton Truck Lines and the Ohio CDL downgrades that Elena warned was a capacity catastrophe in the making, right?
Actually, the fallout from those downgrades is only beginning. I suppose the Iron Lady was right to be measured about the stability of the workforce. But today we're seeing some fascinating moves in the financial markets and a literal trade blitz from Washington.
Look, it is a packed episode. We've got LTL giants reporting metrics that basically show the market is turning a corner. And we've got a bipartisan push to kill the oldest tax in the books.
The one from 1917? About time someone noticed.
Right? But look, the real play today is the battle over yield versus volume. Old Dominion and XPO just released their preliminary May metrics. And the paths they're taking are totally different. Old Dominion is the yield master right now. They reported a 12.3% increase in revenue per day for May.
But tonnage was down, wasn't it?
It was. Tonnage was down nearly 4%. But their yield, revenue per hundredweight, surged 16%. Look, ODFL is basically saying we don't need every shipment. We just want the right shipments. They're targeting a 73% operating ratio. That would be the first real year-over-year improvement we've seen since the bottom fell out in 2022.
16% yield growth? That's sort of, incredible for this market, right? It shows they have the pricing power to polite shut down anyone asking for a discount.
Look, and then you've got XPO, the volume challenger. Their tonnage per day actually flipped positive, up 0.5%, because they saw a shipment count rise of over 3%. They're successfully pivoting toward those local small to medium businesses, the SMBs.
I see.
And that's where they're finding the margins. Now look, the industrial engine is finally restarting. The ISM manufacturing PMI hit 54 in May. That's a 4-year high. Freight moves when the factories are humming.
Actually, I suppose it only moves if the trucks are modern enough to pass an inspection. Which brings us to the Modern, Clean, and Safe Trucks Act. Senators Todd Young and Angela Alsobrooks just introduced it on June 2nd.
Repealing the Federal Excise Tax? We've only been waiting a century.
Actually, it's the highest excise tax on any product in the U.S., 12%. It adds $15,000 to $30,000 to a diesel rig. And $50,000 to a zero-emission truck? Actually, it's a modernization penalty. My thing is, carriers are keeping older, less safe trucks on the road longer just to avoid the upfront hit. And for the small fleets Buck manages?
Here's the deal. 96% of us have 10 trucks or fewer. Look, you're asking a guy to pay an extra $30,000 success tax just to upgrade his safety tech? It don't happen. We keep the pre-emissions trucks running on prayers and baling wire. And then the government wonders why the air ain't clean. It's a mess.
Right? Chris Spear at the ATA is basically screaming from the rooftops that this is the biggest barrier to the clean air goals. Sort of a policy contradiction?
Look, it's a high-stakes fumble. You can't mandate electric trucks and then tax them into oblivion. But if this bill passes, look, we're going to see an equipment supercycle like we haven't seen in a decade.
Well, okay, and they might need those new trucks because the trade map is being redrawn as we speak.
I was looking at the USTR's new Section 301 investigations. They just dropped findings on 60 economies.
60 countries, Jules? Look, that's almost the whole globe.
Right? I mean, the USTR determined that the failure to enforce forced labor laws burdens U.S. commerce. So they're proposing a 10% surcharge on Canada, the EU, Mexico, and 3 others.
Canada and Mexico? Our own neighbors?
Right, because they have the laws but aren't enforcing them. And then a 12.5% surcharge on China, India, South Korea, and Vietnam.
Actually, it's a tactical shift. The Supreme Court struck down the administration's emergency tariff authority in February, so the USTR is using Section 301 as the new anchor. Actually, it's timed for the July 24th expiration of the Section 122 duties. They're just swapping the paperwork to keep the protectionist walls up.
Look, it's a $166 billion question. That's the amount of refunds the DOJ and the Court of International Trade are fighting over from the old tariffs. Look, the government doesn't want to write those checks.
So they're launching new investigations to justify the new duties. But Jules, your retail accounts?
Oh, they are terrified. I mean, they moved production to Hanoi and Brazil just to find some breathing room from the China tariffs. And now those exact countries are being hit with 12.5% surcharges? I mean, it makes landed cost forecasting impossible. It's whack-a-mole on a global scale.
Actually, you see, it's a transparency mandate. If you can't prove your chain is clean, you're going to pay the premium. My thing is, the shield of uniformity is dead. Every shipment needs its own risk profile now. But speaking of premiums, Buck, have you seen the fuel board lately?
Brent crude is touching $100 today. A 22% increase this year. I mean, the Iranian blockade in the Hormuz is cutting off nearly 2 million barrels a day.
It's a breakout, Buck.
Here's the deal. The U.S. crude stocks just dropped 6.8 million barrels this week. That's the 6th week in a row. And now we've got drone attacks and electronic warfare in the Strait, sending insurance premiums up 400%. 400%!
And I saw the Walmart warning today. Doug McMillan said that for every 10-cent increase at the pump, they see a measurable dip in middle aisle spending, right?
Look, it's a freight recession trigger. If the consumer is spending all their cash at the gas station, they aren't buying the high-margin freight.
Actually, it's the geopolitical risk index that scares me. It climbed to number 5 on the global table today. Actually, resilience and security have officially replaced cost efficiency as the primary driver. But I suppose that brings us to the Panama Canal.
Oh, what now?
Actually, a dry chamber overhaul of the Gatun locks starting June 9th. For 8 days, they're cutting daily transits from 38 down to 16. 8 days of a 60% capacity cut. Waiting times are already at 48 hours as of this morning.
Look, it's a goal line stand for global trade. If you can't go through the canal and you can't go through the Hormuz, well, you're taking the 15-day detour around Africa.
And at $100 a barrel, the fuel surcharge is going to be a monster.
Well, before we get into Buck's gut check on the road, I have to share this. Strategic logistics requires world-class engineering. This show is powered by The Stack, developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media. Support the architect behind the code. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/neuralnetworkmedia for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF.
Now it's time for From the Sleeper Cab, our Thursday segment where we get real about the regulations hitting the road right now. And today, we're looking at the FMCSA's 16-hour fertilizer waiver.
16 hours? Buck. I mean, I can barely survive 16 hours in the office with a green juice, right?
Here's the deal. On May 26th, the FMCA and the USDA dropped this temporary waiver for fertilizer haulers across 35 states: Alabama, California, Texas, Pennsylvania. It runs through August 26th because of a supply shortfall for the planting season.
Wait, 16 hours of driving?
No, 16 hours of on-duty time in a 24-hour window. Normally, look, it's 11 driving and 14 on duty. But the big thing, my thing is, they're granting a temporary exemption from the ELD requirements, too.
Actually, that sounds like a precursor to a catastrophe. You're letting drivers bypass the digital watchdog during the longest shifts of the year?
You ain't wrong, Elena. I mean, they say it's for flexibility, but we all know that once you lift the ELD rules, some folks start getting creative with the paperwork. It don't apply to the hazardous stuff like anhydrous ammonia, thank God. But still, hauling straight fertilizer for 16 hours? Well, you're going to be fried.
Look, it's a no-huddle offense for the farmers.
It is. But look, while they're giving the ag haulers the green light to drive longer, we're right in the middle of the 2026 CVSA International Road Check, June 3rd through the 5th. And this year, my thing is, the focus is a direct hit on ELD tampering and cargo securement.
Actually, you see, it's the carrot and the stick. They give the waiver on one hand, and then they have the inspectors looking for secondary devices and ghost logs on the other. My thing is, if you're hauling fertilizer under that waiver, you better have every strap tight and every minute accounted for.
Here is the deal. We already saw almost 300 drivers arrested in Indiana this week for license fraud, and 36 of them in Arizona just yesterday. I mean, Safety Summer is here. The Safety Alliance just announced Brake Safety Week for August 23rd through the 29th. They are going to be looking at drums and rotors with a level 4 inspection.
It's a full-court press, Buck.
It is. And look, if you're a fleet manager, get your 2026 Cascadias in for that fuel line recall. They're chafing against the brake lines. I mean, a chafed brake line is an automatic out-of-service violation. And with the blitz going on, they're looking for any reason to sideline you. From the sleeper cab, that's a wrap. Don't let a waiver trick you into thinking the rules don't matter.
Well, and that brings us to, well, the big strategic news. The shift toward the self-healing supply chain. Dan, you were looking at the C.H. Robinson announcement?
Look, it's a touchdown for automation. C.H. Robinson just unveiled the Lean AI Engineer. It's a closed-loop system that doesn't just look at data. Look, it executes. It studies the orders, truck, ocean, rail, and it does a full global network assessment in 25 minutes. I mean, Jules, look, a task that used to take your team 4 weeks, this thing is doing it in the time it takes to get a coffee. They're saying it handles 92% of 4PL shipments autonomously.
I mean, as an account manager, well, it's sort of intimidating, you know? But Jordan Cass says it improves the operation and heals itself when something breaks without a human noticing.
Actually, without a human noticing is the part that makes my ballroom shoes twitch. You see, if the AI identifies that shifting to a superload saves $1 million, which Robinson says it did for an early adopter, well, what happens when that superload has a claim?
Look, Elena, the AI is the Atlas. Motive, you know, the old Keep Truckin' crew. They just launched their AI assistant running on a Qualcomm Dragonwing processor.
Dragonwing? Sounds like a comic book rig.
Look, it's chewing through 30 different AI models at once, monitoring following distance, blinker usage, driver fatigue. Look, it's solving the data-rich, time-poor problem for fleet managers. But like Buck was saying, NHTSA is already upgrading its probe into those Freightliner automatic braking errors, EA 25006, over 250,000 trucks.
Actually, because the smart trucks are slamming on the brakes for shadows. My thing is, you can't outcode 1,000,000 miles of experience. We're seeing a week where the industry is doubling down on AI assistance, while the federal government is still trying to figure out why the current ones are malfunctioning.
Here's the deal. You put a voice in the dash that tells me when I'm tired? Well, that's a distraction, not a safety feature. I'll take a human driver with grit over a silicon brain that sees ghosts under an overpass any day.
But Buck, look at Orange EV. They just took a 600-unit order for electric terminal trucks. It's a full fleet replacement, not a pilot. And they're using those orange juicers, those mobile battery chargers, to bypass the grid upgrades. I mean, they're claiming a $500,000 saving over 10 years, right?
Look, it's a TCO masterpiece. The math finally works without the government tax credits. And that's why we're seeing the mega mergers. QXO and Top Build, $17 billion.
Actually, it's a 10,000 vehicle merger. Brad Jacobs is rolling up the building products sector just like he did with XPO. You see, they're building mega fleets to control the supply chain.
And then they hand the last mile to the post office, like DHL just did with that $10 billion deal.
Right?
Look, it's a capital efficiency handshake. DHL e-commerce is basically saying we're the middle mile engine. The USPS is the local wheels. It's a win-win for both.
Actually, it stabilizes the Postal Service's revenue while giving DHL the every-door infrastructure. But Jules, as you said, it all comes back to the relationship.
That's all for today's High Road. I mean, if today's stories tell us anything, it's that the tech is finally moving from concept to autonomous action, like C.H. Robinson's self-healing supply chain. But behind every one of those 92% of automated shipments is a human relationship that has to survive the volatility of the Strait of Hormuz and the Section 301 trade blitz. So stay sharp.
Bye.
Later.
See ya.
Keep the shiny side up and maybe double check those brake drums before the inspectors do.